before paternity leave, we were in the office full time. I'd never heard of Microsoft Teams. The business was on a normal forecast. Then I came back and there was this word called furlough. Sales had gone ballistic. No one was working in the office. I was already behind on the Teams management of, how do you even call someone? What's this hand? And that was it was the craziest year I've ever had.
So welcome to the Summit by Fearless Adventures, where we speak to successful individuals about their journeys and their route to their summit. My name is Emily Smithies, I'm the Investor Relations Director at Fearless Adventures, and we're joined today by David Lawson, the former MD of AO.com and now CEO of Salons Direct. Thank you. Hi, David.
Hi.
You've gone on a really incredible journey, I think, going from starting in a business to then running the business, being in charge of it, and now being a CEO yourself. Would you call yourself, an entrepreneur, or how do you think the difference is between like a CEO and an entrepreneur, and how have you found that difference?
I definitely wouldn't class myself as an entrepreneur. I think an entrepreneur has to have that instinct, really big risk, visionary sort of mindset. I think I'm a lot more structured. My skill set is more taking something that exists. So if you ask me to come up with an idea tomorrow about how to revolutionise something, I'm like, But I think if someone's got a good idea, but then they don't know how to scale it, that's where I feel I've learned my sort of trade over the years.
And where do you think you learned that from in kind of your journey?
It was all a bit accidental. So I was absolutely determined to be a finance director. That's like from the age of 12, I'm going to be an accountant. From the age of 12?
How?
I just thought, I want to be an accountant, I want to be a finance director. So I started as a
From
paper
12?
round, and then on the tills in the shop, and then selling programs, and then I was determined. So I became a qualified accountant at a donut factory before I joined AO, and then I worked in finance there, and I realised how unbelievably dull finance is, and like transacting
the donuts
it all.
good?
The donuts, I've never had a donut since, actually. If you see how donuts are made, you'd understand.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Because they are a tiny ball of dough, which then basically sit in a 20-minute conveyor belt full of fat and just slowly expand. And the occasional one falls off, which then goes back on again. We once found half a mouse in a donut. In a muffin.
Stop.
Yeah, that wasn't the issue. The issue was, where's the other half? So we had to close the whole factory.
We won't name and shame this donut factory.
The donut factory will remain anonymous.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting experience. So I then worked hard in what to do finance, but I really liked the management account side. And then I was absolutely determined of I'm going to get really good technically. That's how you need to do really well. And then I did 4.5 years there and felt a bit of a ceiling. And I was still determined, you need to do yourself really technically. Never managed anyone before. And then my boss humiliated me on a call, and that was my line.
What did he do?
Yeah. He just basically slapped me down in a big meeting, must have been about 20 people in there, totally humiliated me. Bear in mind, I was 23, 24, not much resilience, fairly emotional and hot-headed. And I was like, right, that's me. So I went and phoned a recruitment agent, and they had a job in Bolton in a washing machine catalogue and website. And so I went for that. And then that's how the AO journey started, really. Totally accidental, wasn't a deliberate move.
Yeah. And how big was the AO at the point when you first joined?
Somewhere between 50 and 100 million quid. But appliances online, which was the own branded, was tiny. It was like less than 10 million.
So donuts to washing machines.
Yeah, and the scariest point of the whole career was coming into this role as a manager with no management experience, managing 2 graduates. And I was like, oh my word, these graduates are superb, and I know nothing about anything in this business, because I went from supply chain and accounts to commercial and pricing and stock management, which I've not done before. And I remember buying myself a Idiot's Guide VBA book because my first job was to build a pricing model in VBA, which I was like, I've never written VBA, so I remember having to like read it up. It was suddenly like discovering how to manage people.
Yeah.
And then I made a mistake early on with, I think you know Andrew Kirkcaldy.
Yeah.
So Andrew was at AO when I joined, and Andrew was like a senior manager. And I remember thinking, oh, Andrew's well respected. Andrew's got a big team. I'm going to copy him. And I thought, that'll do. And then I tried to sort of copy his style. That was a total disaster. And that was the first learning of, you've got to be yourself. You're authentic. There's no right or wrong way to manage people. And so that was, it's basically the whole thing's been a series of trial and error all the way through.
So you come in, you've got no idea about washing machines and online appliances. Did you ever picture yourself being in charge of that company one day?
No, I didn't even have a role when I started. I accepted a job, so we have no job because another guy beat me to the job I applied for.
Which was that? What was that job?
Pricing manager.
Yeah.
Ironically, he then got sacked within 6 weeks. So I accepted a job because I was on 3 months' notice and then joined. And then they said, he's gone, which was like, right, what could he have done so wrong in 6 weeks? And I thought, well, I'm surely not going to do much better. So the panic stations rock in. And then, so I managed stock and pricing initially. Quite a lot of your career is about right time, right place as well. A lot of luck. I believe that. You need a few wins behind you. It was lucky. My boss humiliated me that day.
We hear a lot about quiet quitting at the moment and people, leaving companies and not really working at one place for a long time. Obviously, I believe the rewards come from what you put in and what you kind of deliver. How many times kind of from that journey of you joining to taking on like a really senior role in that place did you want to leave? And how many times did you consider leaving versus, actually knowing that the grass isn't greener and knowing that you're working towards something where one day that's going to pay off?
So I actually quit twice. I had 2 other jobs at that point versus various troughs. And what I've learned is it's totally like that no matter what. So now I have that expectation of you're going to have at least one really bad day every week. And you have some average days, you have some good days. And that's life. And I had this expectation that it should be all linear. And pay rises should all go perfectly to how you want. I remember once I challenged because I didn't get enough of a pay rise that I thought I deserved. That was a really valuable lesson. And
really?
Then I didn't get anything for 2 years after that.
What did you do?
What did I do?
When you challenged it?
I just went in my brave, naive 26-year-old self and went, I think I deserve more. I think I deserve a title increase, a gym membership, an extra 4,000 quid a year. Oh, do you? Let me give you my view. Right. And I remember walking out of that office going, that's another good lesson. Wait for it. And then from that day, I always focus on doing a good job, focus on the output, and the rewards will come after rather than chasing the money, which I think I chased the money early on, which I think is quite common in the younger generations. Like an extra £1,000 or £2,000 or £3,000 is really important to them. And I get that because it is quite significant, but it's about the output, it's about the work. Then you'll get rewarded, and that's always happened ever since.
Do you think we've got a generation of individuals who are much more short-sighted?
Yes, and apologies to all you young viewers. But yeah, I do.
Yeah,
I see it everywhere I go. Like in the early days, I used to do 12, 13, 14-hour days consistently, which actually, that's not smart looking back, but the effort was there. It was like work. I know it helps being single when I joined and no children, because I've got a family with 2 kids now. And that does change the dynamic a lot because that jumps to your number one position on work. And that's not the same for everyone, and there's no right or wrong thing, but my family's number one and work's a close second. Whereas I think in the younger generations, which is something I've sort of wrestled with, how do you solve? I think going to the gym is number one. Going on time is number 2. Whatever you've got going on, 5 o'clock, oh, I'm out of here. And you can tell because there's just an exodus at 5 o'clock, and you think, well, you've been clock watching. You're not busy enough. I'm not pushing hard enough. So I do worry about the next generation of CEOs.
Yeah, of CEOs. Do you think it's completely up to senior management as well? Or do you worry for them?
Almost like
do you worry for them managing people?
I worry in like 30, 40 years, the competency levels based on the younger generation of what their beliefs are. I do worry. But that's a pure opinion and maybe a bit controversial.
No, it's interesting because it's obviously a topic at the moment in terms of UK productivity. You know, we're trying to find a way to get over 50s back into work because they've all stopped. We're trying to get the most out of young people.
Yeah, particularly post-COVID, managing that flexible, I guess, world that everyone's become comfortable in.
And relationships are all reciprocal. Work's a relationship, your marriage is a relationship. And I think the younger generations, it's a lot more one way. That's not how any marriage survives or any good business thrives. It needs to be both ways.
Yeah. I completely agree. We touched on a little bit there about COVID. You know, you're in charge of a big online business during COVID. This thing called COVID happens, we got to send people home from work. What are you feeling? What's the kind of sentiment within the business at the time, and from a management perspective, what are you thinking?
I didn't know because I was on paternity leave.
Oh, yeah.
So my second was born on the 10th of March 2020. And so I went on paternity leave, and then I went before paternity leave, we were in the office full time. I'd never heard of Microsoft Teams. The business was on a normal forecast. Then I came back and there was this word called furlough. Sales had gone ballistic. No one was working in the office. I was already behind on the Teams management of how do you even call someone? What's this hand? And that was it was the craziest year I've ever had. Like literally we would normally do 50 to 100 grand of freezer sales in a day. We were doing between 1 and 1.5 million a day.
1 to 1.5 million a day of
freezers a day in the early days. Then once the freezer gate panic buying stopped, then it went to TVs.
So people were just buying freezers just for the sake of buying extra freezers?
Oh yeah, you should have seen it. It was, I remember putting, I thought, right, I'm going to put 50 quid on all of them and see what happens because we don't have the stock. Still went. I remember thinking next year's annualization is not going to go well. And then just all sorts of waves of everything like that year. It was absolutely crazy. So we had a whole year of running the business remote. We didn't have anywhere near enough stock. There's no one in the call centre because sales went they near enough doubled. And that's a lot when you're dealing with big appliances. We turned Google off. We've never made more money ever. The analogy, literally the fish was just jumping into the boat and we couldn't cope.
And how did you deal with that internally? Because I guess there's growth is a great attribute of success, but sometimes growing too quickly and too fast can cause other problems. So I guess in that period, how did you work internally to make sure that everything, all the cogs kept working throughout that period?
And also to add to that, how do you manage shareholder expectation? Because, at that time, share prices like that every single day. And, we've seen the kind of bubble burst in the last 18 months, but how are you managing that as well?
So John, the founder, brilliant. Him and the CFO, he mainly managed outwards. So AO was split into broadly a retail side and an operations side. And I looked after the retail side. There's probably 6 or 7 business units across AO. And I looked after the retail engine, which was AO.com, AO.de in Germany, and Mobile Phones Direct, which was an acquisition. So my job was to generate all the revenue, all the supply management, supply chain, down to customer services, then handed it over to ship it and get a warranty sold. There was about 1,200 people in that remit across a couple of different countries, and there was no rule book or precedent for how you then suddenly manage remotely? How do you do the communication? How do you do the updates? How do you manage the culture? What stock do you plan to buy? What's your call centre forecast to do? It was absolutely chaos. So back to the question of how did you manage it? Pure grit, determination, day by day. Of the news, of the Boris's news update, who knew what he was going to say each day, which then triggered different behaviour. So it was almost impossible to manage, and managing growth is far harder than managing decline. Decline, you chuck costs away. Like, it's fairly, not easy, but you can calculate more. How big are you going to grow? Is it going to sustain? What's going to happen? Are we going to be in lockdown forever? I remember we just been working on the AO Arena deal for probably 3 years, and it went live in the November before the March.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, oh my God, just spent all this money sponsoring an empty building. Like, what was I thinking? And so that wasn't the smartest move in hindsight.
Yeah, because it was like another year till it was open again, wasn't it?
And the rest. So I was like, yeah, that's a very expensive sign on a building. But that's so there's no rule book, and anyone who says they can do it in a structured, planned way I would accuse lying, because it's totally unknown. And it was the most stressful year of my life as well, because you're at home as well.
Newborn.
And a newborn. So I had
first?
No, second.
Second, okay.
Turns out I thought one was hard. Having two, that's like 3 times as hard as having one. And it compounds when they're with you all day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And throughout, I guess, in those certain times, in a leadership role, how do you balance making sure that everybody knows what's happening versus not telling them too much? How do you sort of manage that?
For me, I'm really transparent. Like, for me, there's always I'm not a massive fan of bureaucracy. Everyone thinks, oh, they shouldn't know that. I'm a view of everyone's an adult. I trust people with their own time, autonomy. You measure people on output, and so treat people like adults. If you treat people like your kids, like, I can't tell my kids something's going on. Like, that's in effect what you're saying if you don't keep people up to date. So being a CEO, a large part of it is constant communication. So when I came into Salons Direct, one of the biggest complaints was no one knew what was going on. So I've put in a structure now where there's a stand-up every week, there's a monthly newsletter, there's a monthly presentation, there's emails going out all the time. There's mechanisms all around now. I don't believe you can overly communicate, because it's the biggest thing of, oh, I didn't know about that. Why didn't I know? I'm like, do you know what? It's really impossible to get to everyone about everything all the time, but if people feel like you're making the effort to, people then reciprocate well. And it is different in a PLC because there are, like, I could never share profit numbers with the team, which I get. That's illegal compliance. And I was really upfront with that of, I can't share it. But I can share you as much as I possibly can, and I can give you a sentiment. But other than that, I can't.
Yeah. And how do you find that? Because AO is also a very interesting place for that founder CEO dynamic, because it's very, founders have got a responsibility, like you say, of going from 0 to 1. CEO tends to be the one that scales. What advice do you give to early stage founders who naturally think their progression is CEO? Because it's not always the case, is it?
I always say, surround yourself with people who are better than you. Recruit your weaknesses. That is the number one thing. And have that self-awareness. And if you have that self-awareness to think, I am good enough to be able to communicate well, structure an organisation, make sure the cash is right, make sure we're structured with all our plans and organise it, crack on. If you like, and follow what your passion is, but if you like the product, so James Dyson, we went down there a few weeks ago, and he calls himself chief engineer. That's what he does. He signs off the engineering. Don't know anything about numbers, so he's got a CFO. And he's got a team of people around him who do that. So my advice to any founder, don't think because you're the founder means you can become the CEO, because that might really hurt your vision. So get someone who knows how to be a CEO. If you're not sure or at heart don't really want to. And there's no harm in saying, I'm not going to do that. That's not my skill set.
And I guess you've moved, so AO was very much sort of a D2C space. Salons Direct is a bit more B2B, if I'm right.
Yeah.
What's that transition been like, moving from those two types of business models?
If I was moving from e-commerce to store-based, very different, but it's still, this is going to sound very disrespectful, but AO and Salons Direct, they're both a website, they both buy stock from suppliers, and they both sell to customers and have payment methods, and then ship it to customers and have customer services. So 80% of it is identical, like whichever e-commerce business you're in. It's just different competitors, different market, different customer space. And obviously the 20% is the nuance about how does the market quite work, what sort of messages land with customers. But interestingly, doing all the market research over the last couple of months, if you look at the factors important to both, it was price was number one, availability, range and stock was number two, delivery was number three. I remember like hearing Jeff Bezos say those were the top three things as well. And actually you don't need to overthink it. So there's not that much differences. The bigger differences is going from a multi-country, multi-category, 3,000 people mega business to there was like 80 when I joined and much smaller. And so I was spot rotten at AO actually. Like had a PA, had like data and reports everywhere. There was a commercial team of like 35 people. If I need to know answer, go and ask that. But I felt too far away from it at AO because it got too big. And that was the role at AO, but I wasn't fulfilled, which is why I moved.
So come back to like fulfillment is, what is your kind of aim? What is your summit? What do you think you're working towards?
My mission with the business is to make us the market leader. We're number 5 in the market at the minute. So there's a 5 to 10 year horizon of creating that achievement of going from number 5 to number 1. So for me, it's all about the achievement and fulfillment. I'm very competitive. And I do not want to be 5th in the Premier League. No one wants to be 5th. And I have a lot of fun along the way and develop a lot of people. And I love the team. We've generally got a really great business and a good platform. And now it's about, we've set everything up, and now it's about all that discipline and that hard work. And it's ours for the taking, actually.
And you talked about family a little bit earlier on and how that's the priority as well. As a CEO, how, is there any advice you'd give around balancing those two priorities and sort of how you do that?
It's a really hard thing because I think this will be common for a lot of people where if you're not working and you're with the kids, you feel guilty you're not working, and vice versa. If you then miss bedtime because you've got some things to finish, you also feel guilty in not being a good dad. So I've sort of accepted that you can't win. So I've just done a principle of, unless I've got something really, really important that can't wait, I'll get home every night and do the bedtime, tea time routine and try and get some exercise in. And actually what I've found is, it is absolutely quality over quantity. I don't think you've got more than 8 or 9 really, really good productive hours in you per day. I don't know whether it's age and getting more tired, but like when I get to like 5 o'clock, I'm absolutely ruined from a brain point of view because all your day is meetings, thinking, and it's timing. So, and I could do another 2 or 3 hours. It wouldn't be high quality time. So, and I wouldn't want to go through life going, oh, I miss my kids growing up during the week and just saw them at the weekend. That's not fulfilling either. It's also not fair on my wife who works full time. So we have a strict 50-50 split with everything, which tends to work. But everyone's different as well. And I don't want to preach or judge on. It's whatever feels right for you. But I don't feel the need I need to work the longest hours in the business, because if I get us to that market leading position with the team, I've done my job. So it doesn't matter whether I would do that in 3 hours a day or 9 hours a day. If you do that, you've ticked what you're trying to do.
I think you've got so much very useful advice for founders, but also for people who are in organisations. I think, going back to when you were 23 and you got, done over by your boss to where you are now, did you think that was going to happen? Or did it do you think that moment then you created a conviction that you had to go on and achieve something?
I'm a very structured person and I like targets. So I remember I said, right, when I got to AO, I want to be a director by the time I'm 30. Didn't really know what that was, really, or a director in what. And then I remember, pure coincidental, a week before my 30th birthday, I got put on the exec team as commercial director. So I thought, tick. So my next target was, I want to be CEO by the time I'm 40. And I didn't think that would be at AO. Because one, if everything happened at AO, it'd been far too big and far too big a role. If I went in as CEO at AO, it'd fail spectacularly because of the skill set it needs. And then by the time I'm 50, hope I'm done.
Done, yeah.
Yeah. Market leader done, and then go and enjoy your life and go and spend some time with your family, do some projects, go and help. I love helping people. It gives me a lot of fulfillment, helping and sharing advice and experiences with all the many, many, many mess ups that I've done over time. It always frustrates me in an interview. Biggest mistake, I can't think of anything. Bye-bye. Have that self-awareness, have that openness. People are human, they make mistakes every single day. And I encourage that, just say. So I'm trying to build a culture now where if you make a mistake, just tell us. Honestly, it's fine. As long as you not go bankrupt or you've done it maliciously, it's fine.
And what do you think it is that obviously keeps driving you to make that next goal and that next one after that?
It's just in you. I can't stand plateauing. I can't stand wasting time, like every minute's precious. I keep on I had this thought a couple of days ago, God, we've probably got 30 years of actually being able to go on physical holidays, like skiing or something. That's only 30. I was like, that's suddenly life catches up with you, so you've got to make the most of it. And so for me, I'm doing it to create a bit of a legacy, have fulfillment. I really enjoy it. I like using my brain until I'm too tired, and then I go to sleep. And then I want to enjoy it. I want my kids to be happy, and I want me and my wife to go and enjoy some good quality time without just living functional lives with a lot when you've got 2 young kids. Right, who's getting the shopping in, who's doing tea, who's going to put the kids to bed, and that's obviously being part of a parent, and that's fine, but I want to, when we're 50, to be able to go off and enjoy life, and do a bit of consultancy, a bit of help. So that's what's driving me, because you can't get higher than a CEO. I thought about starting my own business. I was going to do that after AO. That's why I left, actually.
What stopped you?
It wasn't the financial risk, it was the stress and the opportunity risk of time, because I'm not naive, and I see and know a lot of founders who have a really, really tough first 5, 6, 7 years, as you can acknowledge, and loads of people have. And one of our close friends, she just lost her business after a 6-year slog, and it's not nice. No. And so it was a choice then of, do I want to become a CEO of a business and help them earn some money, me to earn a bit of money, or do I want to try and create a brand new legacy with that creative idea I'm not very good at, and risk a load of stuff with my family, and I wasn't willing to commit, and I don't regret that.
I think that's a huge level of emotional intelligence. The entire conversation you just displayed a huge level of emotional intelligence, of awareness of yourself and the world and the market, and I think it's commendable for people, because we have so many people right now chasing instant gratification, short-term rewards, rather than being actually, this is where I should play. And I think that's, this, you talk about helping people. I think this people listening to this will really, really enjoy your story.
Well, I very much hope so. And if it helps someone out there, even just one person, then it's worth it.
David, thank you so much for coming in today. I really enjoyed that discussion. I think it's going to be a really valuable piece of content for everyone to listen to. So thank you so much for sharing your story. If you enjoyed what you heard today, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. You've been listening to the Summit by Fearless Adventures.